Here are 5 different things that you didn't know about the Switch 2. Stay tuned towards the end for the most craziest fact of all. The Switch 2 actually began development in 2019, according to one of the head designers, Koichi Kawamoto, and he also states that it may have taken a bit longer than that, as research always starts after a console is released, and instead of focusing on a set product, they think of ideas that would take the most time and effort for, which helps tremendously with super polished games upon release like the next Mario Kart or Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. The L and R buttons are deeper to accommodate for its larger size, along with people with smaller hands. The ABXY buttons are also slightly bigger if you take a closer look, and especially the joysticks. But the biggest question of all, is Joy-Con drift finally going to be going away? Or will it be labeled Joy-Con 2 drift? Joy-Con Drift 2. The magnet Joy-Con function was also planned for the Switch 1 and was actually even shown to by Satoru Iwata, who was president at the time of the Nintendo Switch's development. However, that never actually happened because of the instability of the magnets, along with a lot of connection errors. This means that the magnet feature was actually planned on for over a decade before it was finally perfected for the Switch 2. So if you remember the DS and the 3DS, those consoles actually featured download play, which let you play with people who have the same console but not the same game, and that was actually absent for the Nintendo Switch, given how useful it was. But the reason why it was abandoned was because the games would simply be way too big to go and download wirelessly, which led to the game share feature of the Nintendo Switch 2, which uses the same streaming technology as the Wii U. Somehow, even with that console being an absolute failure, it still manages to creep up into the Nintendo Switch. Now, the most interesting and maybe disappointing fact of all was that the Nintendo Switch 2 was actually considered to be named the Super Nintendo Switch. But the reason why that never happened was because Nintendo turned down the idea, and their argument being that the NES and the Super NES are not backwards compatible, so they didn't want to confuse any of the consumers with the Nintendo Switch and the Super Nintendo Switch, which, if you don't know, the Switch 2 is backwards compatible. They also argued that they didn't want any consumers to focus too much on the specs, but more so on the new games, unlike how the Super Nintendo's marketing was heavy on the specs at the time. Hope you guys learned something new.